Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a truly grim-dark cosmic case file. We're stepping right into a mythic fable where the ultimate battle for reality isn't fought with swords or massive armies. No, it's fought with grammar and a ledger. Think about a universe that's caught entirely between relentless mechanical ambition on one side and absolute freezing emptiness on the other. It's intense, but let's explore how the simple act of impartial observation, literally refusing to let the universe be written in a single dominant voice, becomes the ultimate form of rebellion. The universe itself is a clock that was never wound by a friendly hand. It merely runs until the spring fails. Wow. That haunting maxim right there perfectly establishes the deterministic, decaying reality of our story. I mean, this isn't a universe promising any kind of salvation or redemption. It's literally a cosmic machine just winding down to nothing. This philosophy, which is actually spoken by the manifestation of the denser mechanical will known as Big Ben, frames existence as an inevitable descent into silence. It's a pretty bleak arithmetic, but it absolutely sets the stage for everything we're going to unpack today.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the War for History.
So in this universe, the core threat isn't just destruction in the traditional sense. It's active participant bias that is actively seeking unilateral control over history. We see two incredibly absolutist forces fighting for this monopoly. On one side, you have the dark fire of Sir Brain. Think of this as a frantic mechanical ambition that wants to force the entire world into its own rigid tempo. On the exact opposite side, you have Absolute Zero. This represents pure negation, genesis in reverse basically, freezing stillness. Both of these forces want their specific rhythm to be the only one that exists, completely overriding every other narrative and possibility out there.
Moving on to Section 2, Inverting the Seventh Solitude. Enter Alara, the blind horologist. She completely shifts the paradigm from active domination to impartial observation. To really understand her, we've got to look at this concept called the Seventh Solitude. Originally, Sir Brain sought this as a kind of totalitarian isolation. The goal was to literally be the only will left in existence. But Alara, she flips that entirely on its head. For her, the Seventh Solitude isn't about running away or standing alone on some empty throne. It is the deliberate, defiant act of maintaining an independent ledger right smack in the middle of these warring cosmic forces. It's a working method of record-keeping, rather than a retreat.
Which brings us to Section 3, the impartial field researcher. Now you might be wondering, how does she pull this off? Because Alara is a sensory outsider. She is physically blind. She is uniquely immune to the terrifying majesty of these cosmic gods. She doesn't see a divine sovereign. She literally just hears a faulty escapement that's out of sync. This specific trait allows her to take on the role of the honest guest. Essentially, she functions as a continuous external continuity. This means she enters a highly contested space without ever claiming ownership of the tempo or the frame. By not trying to control the room, she becomes the only person who can actually document what's happening accurately. She steps entirely outside the contest of power.
And her clinical necessity here is absolute. Just look at this quote. "The moment I require the subject of the map to validate the map, the mechanics fail. Independence of the ledger is the entire method." It's brilliant. She cannot rely on the incredibly biased beings she studies to tell her the truth. I mean, if she waits for the mechanical god or the sovereign of Zero to approve her map, she loses all her objectivity. Her ledger must remain completely independent if it's going to survive the apocalypse. Let's look at how she actually does this in Section 4, Mechanics of the Ledger.
So, how does ethereal philosophy translate into literal survival tactics? Let's walk through her operational ratios. Step 1, she maps by touch and honest pulse, actually feeling the mechanical and temporal pressures around her. Step 2, she records the residual signatures left behind by the warring gods. Step 3 is fascinating. She cultivates deliberate soft errors. This is a structural flexibility that basically prevents her from becoming a rigid tyrannical machine herself. And finally, Step 4, she flat out refuses premature narratives. She gathers her data without ever forcing it into a neat little story of good versus evil or victory versus defeat.
And to ground this methodology, she doesn't just use ideas, she uses specific physical instruments. First up is the Ledger Watch, which actively registers the alchemical tension between the dark fire's dominance and her own soft error. Then there's the synthetic wood staff. This thing is made of violet brass grain, so it's half artificial, half natural. It essentially acts as a portable soft error given physical weight. These are the literal tools keeping the opposing columns of reality legible.
Now let's see these tools in action in Section 5, the garden as shared evidence. The Mechanical Garden of Geneva is the ultimate test case for this. It's crucial to understand that this garden is not claimed territory. It is contested infrastructure. The soil itself is recording multiple overlapping footprints from conflicting forces. You have the synthesized pulse providing a concealment field. You've got the dark fire leaving traces of accelerated hybrid growth, which was seeded by the old temporal library. Absolute zero is actively exerting a measurable gravitational signature pulling from the obsidian sea. Even the shadow archetype leaves traces of independent movement. The soil is acting like a giant hard drive, recording all these conflicting forces at the exact same time.
This reveals an absolutely profound open fact. The garden has become a common ledger, written in growth rather than script. By acting as a shared canvas, the garden is concrete proof that no single force has majority control. The open fact of these overlapping footprints is the ultimate defense against a unilateral history. LER's job as the honest guest is simply to keep this common ledger from being claimed by majority control of any single flame or zero.
Which brings us to our climax, Section 6, refusing to close the page. In a universe whose fundamental operation seems to be pure cancellation, you might be asking, what is the value of simply watching? Well, the inadequate becomes an event. Accurate description is an act of profound rebellion. By keeping a soft error alive, by simply staying legible and neutrally documenting the pressures, Ayla actively prevents reality from going completely blank. She's not promising salvation, but she's proving that accurate, neutral description is the most defiant act possible when facing oblivion. The role only ends when the page is deliberately closed or the last measurable pressure ceases entirely.
So we are left with this final, haunting question to chew on. In a universe winding down to zero, who holds the ledger when your own history is contested? When dominant forces try to overwrite the narrative, the simple, continuous act of being an honest guest, of keeping the page open and recording those soft errors, might just be the only true sovereignty we actually have. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep your ledgers open.